Hey folks, Rob here with the first special for C64 Month. C64 Month is just a little informal month, just celebrating the C64, simply because that's back in August in 1982 was when the original American launch happened of the computer. So instead of doing straight gameplays like normal, I thought I'd take a look at a couple of little side cultural aspects and just present those, for those who aren't quite as in on the history and scene of the machine. So this week, what I'm going to do is present a couple of comparison between a European release of a game and an American release, and that in this case is Flying Shark and Sky Shark. Flying Shark is the original, the arcade game is the original UK conversion, as you can see, published by Firebird. Sky Shark is the American release that Taito would later do. Apologise for the glare. This is actually still sealed. Other than being an American NTSC release, it is not going to boot my PAL machine, so I actually just have it as a collectible. So, when it comes to this divide, and having to be simply because of different different publishers in different regions, but also because of different, lot of other varieties. And then games themselves would come out in there are three kind of combinations, or four. The first is some games are just converted straight, maybe a rename. For example, Alley Cat by Houston got renamed to Demolition Mission, which is kind of bland and kind of terrible. Then there were minor tweaks. So, for example, Arkanoid, in its original PAL release, supported a whole bunch of game controllers, joysticks, keyboards, paddles, and the Neos mouse. When Taito brought that over to the US market, they actually had the driver code for the mouse rewritten to support the Commodore 1351 mouse. Unfortunately, there's like a bunch of different incompatibilities, so their driver reading code is slightly different there. Then there were games that got minor tweaks. So, for example, Operation Wolf was originally released in the UK as a single load game for cassette. When Taito brought that conversion over, they actually changed the end of level intermissions. It used to just be a brief bit of text, and then it was like a little picture and the text. As a result, the game also was adapted to be a multi-part loader, loading each level in separately. The biggest case, however, is, like with Flying Shark and Sky Shark, is an entirely new conversion was commissioned. And why that happened is simply because, so in terms of the background, Firebird originally licensed the rights from Taito, who were handling distribution, and had it published in '87. The team was handled by Catalyst coders who'd done a lot of other 8-bit games, and they were originally commissioned to handle all the home conversions. And the C64 one was the least troubled. I'll leave it that way. There's a great site called the Bird Sanctuary, which is pretty much a history archive, a lot of development of like Firebird, Rainbird, and Silverbird games. I'll link that down below. You can check that out and read up on the background. So essentially, Flying Shark was released into the PAL regions, and it did okay. I mean, Zap gave it 63 in their review. And as a result, when Taito went to bring it over, they weren't entirely happy with the conversion. So as a result, they decided to commission this new conversion, and they chose Software Creations. Pretty much on the back of Bubble Bobble, which was incredibly well received, scored incredibly high, and if you've ever seen the gameplay I did of that quite a while ago, you'll know it's actually a really good conversion. Software Creations also would then handle the NES porting, and I had a quick spin of that under an emulator, and it's not bad. So that's pretty much the background. So we've got these two separate versions of the game. I'll cut over to the C64, run them both, just cover it, show some differences, and then we'll come back and I'll sort of sum everything up. And here we are with Flying Shark loaded. So you can just sort of see it's a fairly basic title screen, so fairly basic presentation. Going to the game. We'll let the little launch sequence run, and you can sort of see the first thing you have to try to do is it's one player only, so you see player score down the side, you've got your lives and bombs counter. First thing you can see there is those bullets. They're very hard to see, it's why I die within seconds. I've chosen to actually run against my normal rule of the trained version, just so I can actually show you a bit more than I could. The other thing you can see is, like the arcade game, it actually has horizontal panning. They've actually set the screen up to mimic the portrait monitor in the cabinet, instead of a more landscape style setup like we have here. And we can sort of see, just jump a little further into the level, and you can sort of see there the art style and the larger sprites. You can sort of see things do get a little hard to see sometimes with the bullets. And the way they've chosen to do it is like, it's sort of, using the multicolor graphics mode, and the pixels are 2 white pixels with like 2 flashing pixels. It does get distracting. It is tough to see, and actually when playing, it's one of the reasons why I do find myself challenged with the game. Now we've got sort of the tank boss towards the end of level 1. I just use a few bolts to get through it, and really we go to end the stage here, and this is the end of stage landing sequence. At which plane lands, you get your bonus points based on your bombs, and we go to load the next stage. In this case, I cut the loading out, and the one thing that's interesting, you'll just see the press fire to start message, as when it loads, because you're loading off tape, you know, you might walk away, so it gives you that opportunity. Now we're into the sort of first little challenge bit of wave 2, and you can see it does get frantic. Just between, you know, all these firing, and again, the bullets are hard to see against the water, which is one of the big things I think I have with this version, is that it is a tough game. And I found when playing, I actually got into a lot of loops where I would just get stuck on a section several times to get through because of the checkpoint. And now we've got these wave of boats. I mean, one thing is impressive is that there's no, you know, no slowdown and no flicker. Now we've got sort of a larger event at this stage, which is this giant carrier. And you can sort of see how they've put that together. And again, it actually took me several goes to get past, so why I'm a little frantic with the bombs, I think. Yeah, I had to use cheats to even get this far. It's one of the big things with this game is the difficulty. And, you know, it could be that I haven't got used to the patterns, but the larger sprites, yeah, the fact they've chosen to go with larger sprite graphics, and the fact they've chosen to have the bullets designed the way are, makes it hard. And this is the last part of level 2, this is where I just couldn't get past. But you go through this land sequence, and the bullets, they don't clash as bad here because of the plain background. Now we're over to Sky Shark, and the presentation is a little more impressive. Here we're loading up, this little tight animation happens on all their games, and it scrolls down. Now I'm actually running a PAL version. I'm running a patched version to, well, a cracked version to run on PAL hardware. You can see it's a nicer title screen. You've got the music kicking in. At this stage, I'm using the straight. This is still at PAL speed, and you've got options for 2-player, which, like the coin up, isn't simultaneous. You alternate in turns. Now we'll start up. Normally it would load. This version's caching that stuff into where it starts a little faster, and you can sort of see here. They've gone for smaller sprites and also a wider playfield so the screen doesn't scroll. Which to me, you've got more room to see. And as you got more room to see what's going on. And you can see now, they've chosen to do the bullets in a different style. They're much larger and a solid colour. And while there are bits of the area that's yellow, here it's okay. Now, because this was originally a US game, I've actually sped this footage up. I captured this on my PAL C64. I've now sped it up to approximate what it would actually be like on a US model. And you can see the game's very frantic at this point. I had a quick play of it on an emulator just to mimic it, just to see, you know, if this was going to work. And you get the feeling. I mean, there's a little jumpiness that I don't believe would happen on real hardware. It's just, you know, trying to fit 50 instead of 60 frames a second. And you can see that the playability is improved here because, you know, you can actually see everything a little clearer. There's like less screen scrolling, which makes better sense of a landscape-orientated display that the C64 has. And yeah, the music's a lot more enjoyable. I mean, I'm enjoying this music a lot more. And you can sort of see how the game runs. Yeah, both reproduce the coin-op, the original arcade game, very well. Now we're coming up to the tank. And you sort of see where the sprites look a lot more detailed. They don't rely on as much expanded sprites here. And with that out of the way, you can see there's actually a lot less flying to get to the end of level checkpoint. And here we are with level 1 complete. We do the little landing sequence. And you can just see the presentation here is a lot nicer. Because while we stop, we actually get our bonuses. We see our points being updated. And even a humble congratulations message. It's just that presentation polish. So now we load level 2. Again, loads are a lot faster. And again, the cracked version I was using actually cached a lot. So you didn't have to do that way. So you can see how level 2 compares. Where we're coming up to this sort of the landing scene. You know, you can see that there's still, you know, 3 landing craft. And we can see, yeah, they've chosen probably here. I personally feel that the colour of the water isn't right, but I think it's to do with the fact they chose dark blue for the player's craft. Now we're coming up to the boats. Flash forward, cut to the boats, and you can see how they do generally look better. I mean, I generally find myself being more impressed with the graphics here on Sky Shark. And this section actually happened to be a little longer as well. There are definitely more boats you have to fight past. So you can see the pattern, and we'll get our way through. And we're cutting up to the carrier. There were a few more boats, so I decided to cut past that. We're cutting up to the carrier, and you can see how, you know, the improved design changes the way level is. I actually think it's a lot fairer here as a result, because the guns are mounted on the edge, they're not completely swarming you. And the advantage of having the smaller graphics gives you a lot more room to do that. And then we're going to come up to the landing part, and again, this is about as far as I could get. So both versions feel balanced roughly the same, which is actually surprising. I guess it shows you there is still a core, really solid game underneath, but it's just a heck of a hard one. I mean, I think this is about as far as I could get. So, having seen both versions, I guess the question is, what do you think? What do I think about both? To be honest, I kind of prefer Sky Shark. As you can sort of see, the smaller sprite graphics really make that game a lot more playable, in my opinion. The controls were tight in both versions, thankfully. I just prefer the smaller graphics in Sky Shark. Actually, I have to admit, I prefer Tim Follin's soundtrack, and I just prefer the art style in particular. In particular, that actually made bullets a lot more visible, and I think when you're playing a shmup, you need that clarity of bullets. But that being said, in terms of both games in general, there's still a lot of design stuff I'm not a fan of. I really dislike the difficulty. It's an incredibly hard game, and as you've seen from the footage, I got beaten a lot. I mean, I wanted to show more than bits of those 2 stages, but I just got to the stage where I just could not get past that part late into stage 2 on either conversion. So they're roughly the same difficulty level, and I really dislike the checkpoints. But to me, the shmups I like tend to, when you die, allow you to continue where you left off with a few seconds of invulnerability. You know, I mean, if you've seen the channel, you know my favourite shmup on the 64 is the conversion of Salamander, and that's really for that reason. You know, you die, you've got a couple of seconds of invulnerability, you can re-get your power-ups and continue, and it keeps the action fast and fluid. Sadly, this isn't the case with either Sky Shark or Flying Shark. The other thing that helps push Sky Shark over the edge for me is minor, and it's just proper auto-fire support. Flying Shark, you know, having to repeatedly hammer the fire button, that's fine when you're on an arcade cabinet, but when you look at most of the joysticks you have on a home computer back in the 80s, you don't have those kind of fire buttons. So even me with the trusty zip stick I have hooked up to the C64, it's not the best. Either way, they're still good games. I mean, they're not my favourite shmups, they're both solid, and I think, you know, you out there might actually have different preferences. So I will say check them out regardless. But it's really interesting to see how, you know, the one title, because of 2 different development teams, can actually have completely different implementations. Anyway, so that's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed this. As again, for C64 Month, I'm going to be doing a whole bunch of slightly, you know, a couple of out there things. Thanks again for watching. Thanks again for subscribing as always. If you haven't already, please do if you would like to see more. You can have a look in the corners. You'll see a couple of, you'll actually see prior double check comparison I did between Afterburner. And as always, you know, you can like the page on FB. There'll be links below. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video.